My name is Alexander Glaves. I'm from Everett, Washington. My call was Salt Lake City South, and I served in July 2012 to July 2014.
My name is Seth Baum. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I was called to the Utah Salt Lake City South mission, and I served from June 2013 to July 2015.
My name is Carolyn Jensen. I'm from Seattle, Washington area. I served in the California Bakersfield mission from September 2013 to March 2015.
My name is Clark Jensen. I served in Tokyo, Japan from November 2013 to November 2015.
All right, so welcome back. We are jumping into the first 6 months of our mission experience. So this point in the mission, you're past training. I mean, technically it encompasses training, but you're starting to feel like you understand what it's like to be a missionary. You don't have all the experience, but you know what it is to have greeny fire, and you kind of know how to utilize that greeny fire a little better than you did when you were in the first 3 months. I don't know. Do you guys feel the same way about that?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like the greeny fire that I had could be more symbolized just by pride.
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling. In fact, so we were talking about this last time, but my companion for most of this point was a guy named Elder Henry. And Elder Henry and I, we had enthusiasm, we had greeny fire. We were all about the elbow grease and hitting the pavement. And looking back, we did not have all of the skills necessary. There's this one point we were going out with one of our ward mission leaders and did splits with him. And this guy, at the end of it, straight up looked at us and we're like, what were you guys teaching? Like, do you know Preach My Gospel? Have you read it? And it was like kind of a humbling moment where we were like, I mean, yeah, but we were both having that energy, so we weren't giving it as much effort as we could have been, you know? We didn't know exactly what we were supposed to be studying, so we were just reading. And he's like, guys, you guys need to learn how to teach.
Nice.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so that was largely my experience. There was this one time we were teaching tithing. And tithing is one of those lessons that, if you're not confident, can come across really awkward, right?
Right.
And we were teaching this lady. She was from the South, you know, Black Southern Baptist, right? That was like her origin. And so we were teaching her, and Elder Henry is being the most awkward you can possibly be. And he's like, so this is tithing, and this is kind of the one that people don't like. But she was just like, what? Are you kidding me? She's like, I love tithing. And she started to like bear her testimony on her experiences with tithing. And I was like, man, we need to clean this up. We need to be confident. We need to, because I wasn't doing any better. I'm just sitting there watching this train wreck happen and doing the best I can to support Elder Henry.
Dang. Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad that that sister was able to like take it all in stride, because man, those first couple of months are just so rough, especially when you're not with your trainer anymore and kind of like that quote unquote like protective bubble, I guess, is theoretically gone. And so
Leaving the nest.
Like, yeah, you're just out there. I'm really thankful for this one woman that I met on my mission. Her name was Lisa Manning. And I don't know how y'all feel, but I feel like everybody who really tries to serve a good mission, they'll have, I don't know, 4 or 5 people that they'll meet and teach that will essentially change their lives forever. And for me, this person was Lisa Manning. Now, Lisa had a really interesting story because she was living with a guy at the time who had been a member but had like gone inactive. He and his wife had gone inactive. And then him and his previous wife had split, and then he started dating Lisa, and then they decided that they wanted to get back in the church. They wanted to commit to, I guess, having like more of the blessings that John, who was the husband, that John knew about and that Lisa was intrigued about. I guess their main hookup was that once John's ex-wife found out that they wanted to get married and that Lisa wanted to get baptized and all of that good stuff, she never signed the divorce papers. And so, like, they were just in this weird limbo where they were, like, living together, which of course is wrong, but they were also, like, always coming to church, and, like, Lisa was meeting with us very, very frequently. But it was just, like, a very, very kind of prolonged process. I think she finally got baptized, like, at the end of that transfer before I became companions with Elder Glaves. But I just remember that we were so bad teachers, and she would just, like, let us... Like, I remember there's one time we were trying to teach her. It was, like, the plan of salvation. And I just stopped Elder Berater, and I was like, we're doing a terrible job right now. Like, this is so bad. And I looked at Lisa, and I was like, Lisa, would you mind if we just, like, take 30 seconds and restart? We're gonna go through everything, and we like whipped out our preach by gospels because it was just like so atrocious between me, mechanically speaking, not being a very good teacher, and my companion who couldn't, like successfully speak English yet. I don't know, it was just a freaking hot mess. And so, like, I don't know, Lisa, she was freaking... I love Lisa so much, but she was just like kind of our teach dummy for a minute while we would like try to get our stuff straight. But what I also love about Lisa, and so I don't know if y'all remember, a couple of episodes ago I talked about how Elder Hammond taught me like the golden question, and that was, if you know that these things are true, what are you gonna do about that? Because, like, I mean, I don't know, we've just been meeting with Lisa for so long, like, weeks and weeks, and she was keeping all of her commitments, except for, technically the law of chastity, because she was living with somebody who she wasn't married with, and they couldn't get married because his wife would never sign the divorce papers. So complicated, and it was just, like, dragging on and on and on. So eventually got to the point where our district leader and zone leaders were like, hey, like, she's not technically progressing anymore, because, like, you can't continue to set new goals for her. You kind of might need to drop her or put your effort towards somewhere else, and, just, like, help her to pray and, like, have faith that these things will change or whatever. I don't know, in my mind, I was just like, man, I don't want to do that. Like, that's lame. Like, Lisa is, like, too righteous to, like, let that happen, I guess. And so, finally, I was like, all right, yeah, I guess we'll go, like, drop her, and we'll still see her, like, at church, because I know she's going to be there. And so we went over there, and that was the first time I, like, ever used that question. And it was, like, at the end, I was like, look, Lisa, I know what your situation is, but the gospel is true, right? And she's like, oh, Elder Baum, of course I know. Like, the gospel has, like, blessed my life so much. And I was like, all right, well, like, you want to get baptized, right? And she's like, oh, more than anything. I was like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I feel bad because I kind of said it, like, in a borderline sarcastic way. Because I was like, I didn't want to drop her. I was, like, angry at this ex-wife for, like, holding up this whole process. I was just frustrated with the situation, so I was just like, well, what are you going to do about it? And she was like, you know what, Elder Bob? You're right. I'm going to go get a trailer, and I'm going to move into that trailer in our front yard, and I'm going to sleep there every night so that I can go ahead and get baptized. And I was like, wait, what? And, like, this was, like, this might have been, like, October-ish. So this is, like, right when, like, the cold wintry season starts to happen in the valley. And so she did that for, like, a whole week. And I kid you not, like, it was in the negatives every single freaking night. Like, it was snowy, it was, like, blizzardy and windy. And this trailer, like, like, a cardboard box might have been a more suitable living alternative, if I'm being honest
Holy
with
cow.
you. But she, like, did it. Oh, and then, like, one night her heater went out, and she showed some commitment. And when she told me that she was going to get that trailer and start living in her front yard so that she could, like, get baptized and would continue to live in that trailer until she was able to get married, I, like, kind of didn't believe her at first, because I was like, yeah, right, like, that's just, like, that's too big of a change, right? That's too big of a sacrifice. But this woman, to her credit, she did it. And that was a huge, huge wake-up call for me. because that was kind of like the first time I ever encountered like I guess like a challenge to my testimony, because I don't know if the Lord has ever required me to do something like that before, to like exercise that much faith to like get a blessing or something like that I wanted or that I needed. It was like a huge eye-opening experience for me, because at that particular moment, if I was being totally honest with myself, I don't think I would have gotten that trailer. I don't think I would have suffered through like those freezing nights in a trailer with a busted out heater. And I've never seen somebody be more happier. Like, I don't know, like, golly, I wish I could tell Lisa how much that meant to me, and I tried to. I tried to tell her, like, how great of an example she was for me and how much her devotion to the gospel had changed my life in that instant. I don't ever feel like I got it across, which has kind of been like one of the only regrets I've ever had about my mission, was not being able to like feel satisfied with the gratitude that I feel for her. So she lived in this trailer for a week, and then like I guess that was like what the Lord was waiting to see. And this is gonna sound like kind of bizarre, because like I think it was like the day before Elder Glaves got into the area, those divorce papers were signed, and then they went down to, I guess, like City Hall or whatever to get like a marriage license. And then that next day they were married, and then they were baptized. And then she got baptized that same night. That next day in church, she got set apart. And then she was called to be like the first counselor in the Relief Society.
Holy cow.
Like that. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but it was just like, golly. And she was such a rock. Like, and like we had worked with her because she had a smoking problem, and she like, man, she like demolished that smoking habit, because she was up to like a pack and a half, 2 packs a day or something like that. But she like wrecked the smoking habit, got that out of her life. And then like anytime we ever encountered somebody with a smoking problem, we were always hitting Lisa up, and she was always there. She loved to come teaching with us. Man, she was just
awesome.
So freaking awesome. And I will never stop loving Lisa for, I guess, like allowing me to just like have the opportunity to teach her and to watch her succeed and to like learn from her.
That's such
whatever.
a stunning demonstration of faith.
No,
right?
it really is. Like, even now as I'm like retelling this story, and I've been thinking about it leading up to this particular episode, and like trying to remember all the details, but even now I just like, I don't feel like I can adequately put into words how much that experience changed my life in such like a deep way and in such a short amount of time. I don't know, it was just cool.
Yeah, I loved meeting people whose lives were changed by the gospel, or who were totally committed to doing what they needed to get that change. Like what you're talking about with Lisa. There were a couple people, one kind of at the beginning, who had a brother who he was really close to, had just died just like a week or two previous to when we'd run into him. And we mentioned the aspect of being able to be together forever as a family. And in particular, baptisms for the dead, which is normally not something you imagine talking to someone about, like on the doorstep, is like one of the very first things about the gospel you bring up, but it actually meshes with Japanese people really well. They have a almost identical ritual that they do in Shintoism. He was like, yes, like more than anything, I want to be with my brother again, and whatever I need to do so that I can be baptized for him, I want to do all the things leading up to that. And we're like, okay, well that means that you need to get baptized too. And he's like, okay, what do I need to do that? And we're like, okay, well, let's teach you, let's help you quit smoking and drinking and all of these other things. And he's like, okay. And it was really hard for him to do all those things, but just like you were talking about with Lisa, it always amazed me that not only was he immediately ready, despite our really crappy lesson teaching or or really hard commitments that we gave him, he was like, oh yeah, okay, well that's what needs to be done, then that's what I'm going to do. And you could totally see how much happier he got, even just week to week as we taught him, or just how much, I don't know, brighter his apartment got. That atmosphere in his apartment felt so much happier. I do remember as a greenie though, falling asleep in lessons with him all the time. I was just straining. I had no idea what was going on in most of those lessons. We would go
I feel
through.
like were they very long lessons?
Yeah, they were long lessons too, and we'd be sitting there for like hours, and my companion would nudge me multiple times throughout the lesson. I'd wake up and try and pay attention to another sentence or two before falling back asleep. And finally, at the end, my companion would wake me up all the way and turn to me in English and be like, testimony now. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And I'll say my like 2 or 3 sentences of a testimony, and our investigator very kindly would give me his undivided attention, even though I'm sure I was messing up the Japanese terribly, and then off we would go. But yeah, I loved those people who were totally committed. It strengthened my testimony, and I'm the experienced one. They're the new ones at it.
It's cool to see how that kind of works as a symbiotic relationship, right? Where like they can see you and you're a missionary. So like, you know, you have the mantle, but you also have the tag, right? You're showing your faith just by being there, right? But like on that side of it, you see these people who were like, you look at it and you think, could I do that? And you're like, I don't know if I could. It kind of, yeah, it kind of reminds me of something Joseph Smith said about like how if he was hearing his story as an outsider, he wouldn't believe him. Yet here he is, you know, saying it, right? Because he knows that he must. And I find that really interesting, especially to be in that situation.
Totally.
So I had an experience pretty early in my mission. It was like my 3rd transfer. And if you want to talk about not knowing what you're doing, I definitely did not. And I mean, my companion was great. I'm not trying to like throw shade on her. And I think the teaching was okay, but the main issue that I see looking back is that like we did not ask enough questions or even listen to her. So which is not great. Yeah, so we had an investigator named Lorena, and I'm realizing now, like, until that last lesson that I had with her, I did not know enough about her life or how she was feeling about what we were teaching. Like, she kept letting us back in, and like she did come to church once. So like the signs were there, but like I don't think we ever really asked her like, oh, so like how is this going for you? Why do you keep letting us come back? Because we were very self-conscious the whole time we were teaching her, I feel like. But what was cool was that she was the first investigator I realized was feeling the spirit. Like I said, we didn't know why she kept letting us back in. And at a certain point, we were just really like reading from the Book of Mormon with her, kind of like taking turns reading a verse in a little circle like in Sunday school, which is not the most compelling teaching. And then we would teach principles from it. But I mean, that's not really what I would look for in a good lesson.
They can kind of do that themselves.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. She could just read it herself. But like, it turns out on one of our last meetings, she opened up and said, that was really important for me. I needed to hear that. And I loved doing it because it gave me a feeling. I just felt a peaceful feeling that I haven't felt before. And I was like, oh, I know what that is. You should definitely try and keep feeling that feeling. We're going to teach you how to feel it more because it's the spirit. And like same thing, like we invited her on like a church tour because she wasn't, for the first few weeks, she didn't really make it to church. So we were like, maybe we just need to show her where it is and like teach her how important church attendance is. So we did a church tour with the Word mission leader and his wife, and just coming into the chapel at the end, she goes, oh wow, I get some really good vibes here. And I was like, yeah!
Yeah, seek those good vibes.
The whole rest of this experience might have been a complete failure, but like if you felt good vibes just then, that is the spirit telling you that you should come to church. And then she did, and she said again, like, yes, I felt that peaceful, good feeling when I came to church. And that experience of seeing, one, that you need to connect with an investigator. You need to be willing to ask them questions and listen to them, but then also like that the Spirit is going to do most of the work.
Thank goodness.
Like, yeah, thank goodness, because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah,
I don't think any of us did.
I think that's like a big point, right? Is that like you kind of act as this like relationship, as this connection to like get them there, but then like ultimately, as some of us have quite literally found out, you can just babble for 45 minutes, make solid commitments, and and the Spirit's gonna do the rest, which is, as I say it, not the optimal way to do missionary work. but that being said, like if you're going to allow yourself to be made a tool, then the Lord's gonna be willing to use you in however way he can, right? There is this experience I had. This is one of the subtly wildest stories from my mission. We were in Kearns. We came across this lady. I think I'd talked to her before. This was like my second time in the area, and so we started for whatever reason we mentioned a verse from the Doctrine and Covenants, and she's like, and she tells us what the verse is. Like we don't say what the verse is. She just like recites the verse from memory, and we're like, "Come again?"
What?
And we're like, "That's weird." And so we're like, "How did you know that?" And she's like, "Oh, hold on a second." And she goes and gets her copy of the Doctrine and Covenants, and this thing is like covered in ink, right? Like this thing is painted red, and she's like, I got this book from like my grandma or something, and I read it and I know it's true, and it was like the Lord speaks to me through this book, and so I've studied it. And she like legit has most of the Doctrine and Covenants memorized, and we're like, what?
Holy cow.
Like,
you're like, well, you have come to the right place then.
Right. So we're like, okay, that's fantastic. But you do know, like, so if this is true, what else does that mean? She's like, well, it means that, Joseph Smith is a prophet. And that, it's like, we're like, great. So, like, have you read the Book of Mormon? She's like, no. We're like, why not?
Naturally.
So she looks at me, right? And she says, I haven't read the Book of Mormon because I had a vision, or like I had a dream or something, where my grandma came and told me that once I read the Book of Mormon, the work in my life would be complete. So I'm afraid that if I read the Book of Mormon, I'm going to die.
Oh,
And we're like,
oh my gosh.
well, so, like, I'm like, interesting, crazy, right? Like, and we're like, but listen, like you need to embrace the Lord's plan. Like, if that's his plan for you, right, then you need to read the Book of Mormon. And you need to read the Book of Mormon anyway, so you can pray about it and know that it's true. And so we're like, do you agree? She's like, yes. And so we're like, will you read the Book of Mormon? She's like, yes, right? So this was not...
I'm so afraid that she's gonna die.
Yeah, right.
You just
So
invited her to die, man.
so I come back, right, and we're walking around, and there's like a ton of cars at a stake building, and we're like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, it's a funeral. We're like, oh, for who? And I kid you not, it was that lady.
What?
She died of a toothache.
what?
Yes. So she had a toothache, and she didn't get it checked out, and the infection went into her brain and killed her. This is like
It
maybe
happened.
6 weeks later, right?
No way.
And it's like first off, like, faith, right? Like, she just, like, clearly,
Holy cow.
all I know is that is everything I know. I don't know if she went and read the Book of Mormon.
Like, if
I know
I
that she
got a
committed to it.
vision that said, read the Book of Mormon and your life work will be complete,
Die.
I would also be terrified to read the Book of Mormon, even if I knew that it was true.
Right? So
Oh
I'm
my
like,
goodness.
did I kill this lady? Like I said, that's all I know, but that is my running assumption. But yeah, that was like wild. Because first off, it's always wild when you like, find out that someone you talked to less than a month ago was suddenly dead. But also like everything else surrounding that was just like, oh my goodness, like
Dang.
because it's such an
Can you
unusual
imagine
story.
the grandma though,
right?
like in heaven, being like, "You did it, yeah!"
And she's like, seriously, Grandma? I don't know. Yeah, that's anyway.
Oh man,
That's
so
wild.
that reminds me of James, and me and Elder Glaves actually taught James together. But James was a super interesting guy because he did some very very bad stuff, and we don't really need to go into that. But he had had a very rough life, and because of that, he did some bad things. But I'll tell you right now, I don't think that I ever taught anyone on my mission who I felt like really, really, really wanted to repent for the things that he did.
He certainly
Um,
defined a broken heart and a contrite spirit.
yeah, he really did. And I first met him like right after he had gotten out of jail, and he had met with some senior missionaries in jail. And so when he had gotten out, he was put in contact with, I don't know, one of the bishops in our ward, and the bishop put him in contact with us. So we went to go teach him, and James was definitely interested, and yeah, and like having essentially a clean slate because he regretted a lot of the things that he did. And I don't know, he was pretty faithful in like keeping his commitments. He liked reading about the Book of Mormon. He really liked learning about the plan of salvation because I believe it was like his little sister had passed away at a very very early age while they were both young, and he'd kind of carried that emotional weight with him through a lot of his life. And he was really good about coming to church as well. He worked up to buy himself a bike so he could bike himself to church. And because of the nature of the things that James had done, he was going to have to get approved from like church headquarters to be baptized. And I tell you, like, I don't know, Alex can vouch, but I was very, very confident that things were going to work out for Joe. And I really wanted it for him because I just from like talking to him and him like explaining himself, I really felt like he had had a change of heart and that he had a desire to, put those things behind him and just focus on essentially living the gospel. But I think at the end of me and Alex's time together, we finally heard back from church headquarters that he was not allowed to be baptized during this lifetime. And I
This
just
is
thought,
heartbreaking, by the way.
yeah, yeah, it was. Because, I mean, like, wouldn't you say, Alex, that we took our time with James?
Oh, yes.
Like,
oh, yes. Well, like, you had been in the middle of teaching him when I got there, and we taught him for almost my entire time with you, I feel
yeah, like it was like, and it wasn't like we teach him and then he'd like kind of disappear. Like I seem to remember that we like consistently were like teaching him, and he was improving. So yeah, for me that was like, I don't know. I guess like with the experience that I'd had, I've never heard somebody like being rejected baptism, and so that was just like that was a weird thing for me because I like I don't know, I couldn't like wrap my head around it or anything like that.
I remember we were talking to him. We were basically trying to keep his spirits up, right?
Right.
And he looked at us. He's like I feel like he didn't even say feel. He was like, what just happened was that Christ doesn't want to forgive me of my sins, and we're like, that's not the case. Like that's not it. Like it's he's like I mean like that's what this letter says, and it's like, and I did our best to tell him like, listen, that's not it at all. But and it wasn't, right, like certainly not. But not only is that the way he felt, you could kind of get why, right? And that was hard. That was
because
really
I mean,
hard.
just because of the gravity of the things which he had done, like essentially everyone like would
that was his
treat him
life,
like that.
right?
Like nobody wanted him around. And I mean, like from the other people's perspective, like it makes sense. Or it's just like it was a very complicated situation with James. Then after that, like I don't know. I think. Well, Alex, he got transferred out of the area, and so me and my new companion, I think we just kind of, like we would visit him, like occasionally, but we kind of just came to the conclusion that there's nothing that like we can really do right now, because like by that point he'd been taught all of the lessons, multiple times, at least twice, and he was still coming to church. But I don't know, it was just a weird situation where I definitely felt helpless, and I felt bad and confused, and I don't know, it was just weird. So I spent my next 6 months in Kearns, and I had a couple different companions, and I would always, check in on James, and he would always still come to church. He'd bike himself to church. And then I eventually left the area. But a couple months later, I got a call from the bishop who had initially introduced us, Bishop Johnston, and that guy was awesome, but that's a story for another time. But he had told us that James had passed away, and that he had put in his writing, or like he had written into his will, that as soon as humanly possible that he wanted to have his temple work done for him. So that bishop and his son went and did it for him. And I thought that was kind of cool, because I mean, that was what the verbiage of the letter said. It was just that he was not allowed to be baptized during this lifetime. And to this day, I don't really know like why it was like that, but just, I don't know, to be told that like you can't be baptized while you're living, and then for him to die essentially a few months later was kind of interesting. And I don't know, I've always felt kind of at peace with that little, I guess, arc in my mission, just because I knew that it was something that he wanted, and that in some way, shape, or form he was able to get it. And I think that, he's been happy with it ever since, I guess, if that makes sense.
I feel like that's one of kind of the more pure parts of the doctrine of the baptism of the dead. It's like, it's not just for people who necessarily never heard of it or whatever, but it has more, deeper meanings, and that repentance and like the grace of Jesus Christ, it extends beyond this life. And I think that's pretty powerful.
Right.
Seth just told me about that a month ago or so, and so I never learned about the conclusion to that little, like, as you put it, arc until recently, and I don't know, it has a powerful effect on me too. On a lighter note, so like the first 6 months of my mission were pretty wild, and like a lot of wild things happened during them. Like, looking back, even on my mission, I was like, wow, like those were eventful. Like, my first district leader, I was on splits with him one time, and we were about to go to a baptismal interview, which is why I was on splits with him. And we went to dinner before that, and I'm trying to like impress him. I'm trying to chat up the members and, be a good missionary. And he's just out of it, right? He's just like, I've never seen somebody zone out that hard. And about 30 minutes in or 45 minutes in, he's like, hey, listen, just so you know, I've been really stupid lately. I have like chronic seizures, and I haven't been taking my medicine because I haven't had a seizure in a while, so I thought it'd be good. So I might have a seizure. If I do,
just so you know.
If I do, it's okay. Just don't call the hospital or anything. It'll be fine. I just need to come out of it. And we're like, okay. So we finish out the meal, right? We finish out the meal appointment, and Grimley's fine. He's totally fine. And we get on our, so we leave, and I'm super green, right? This is in training, and he's just like, okay. I'm like, okay, we're going. So he like lumbers over to his bike. We get on our bikes. We start riding, which, by the way, as a note, if somebody is worried about having a seizure, don't have them get on their bike. So we start going, and Grimley just starts going fast. He just starts pounding it, and I'm like, if any the bike falls over, I think he's like having a go at me, right? I'm like, oh, ha ha ha. And like he fell on the ground, and I'm like, oh, that's funny. And he doesn't get up, and I'm like, are you okay? And then I start to see, no joke, like blood pool away from his head, right? And I'm like, crap. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, well, I'll call 911. and I can't get service, but like 4 other people are in the street looking at this, presumably dead elder, and calling an ambulance for me, right? So an ambulance comes, and we get, of course, we like, make sure his tongue isn't, and he wakes up, right? But like the ambulance comes and they put him in the ambulance, and I'm like riding up front in the ambulance. I'm just like, what is going on? Is this just something that normally happens? And I'm like driving down, and I call my mission president, President Miller, and he's like, "Oh, Grimley had a seizure, huh?" He's like, "Yep." "Was he taking his medicine?" "No, he said he wasn't." "His mom isn't gonna be happy." And he's like, "So you called 911?" He's like, "Yes." He's like, "Listen, elder, like you did good, but if something like this happens, call me before 911." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Listen, like I know doctors around the valley. I'm gonna be able to get there faster than the paramedics will be able to. We'll be able to take care of him better, and it'll be cheaper." And he's like, we're like, "Okay, President Miller." He's like, "But you did good, elder." So, and then we were like in the hospital until like 1:00 that morning, and
That's
He
wild.
almost died on your watch.
right? It's freaky. Like, you don't know what it's like to sit there and watch somebody on the ground and like start seeing blood pool out of their head, and they're like
Right?
not
You're
moving.
like, oh, my companion is maybe dead?
Yep, could be. Who knows? Like, I don't know. Like, he's
cow.
shaking, but anyway. Yeah, it was friggin' wild. But I got to
Yeah, I
ride in
feel
the
like-
front of a ambulance.
Okay, side note, I just have to I have to say this before I forget it. One time, me and Elder Glaze, I think we got out of a lesson late on the other side of of our area, so we were hustling to get back home for curfew, and so we decided to like cut through the church parking lot, and there's just like this small little, well, it was like a okay sized fence that we were gonna jump. So I remember that Elder Glaves like ripped his pants right in the crash when you were climbing the fence.
I don't
Do you remember that?
I don't remember that at all.
And it was like, I don't know why these like catastrophe things are happening. I just remember that, and you're kind of like, well, thank goodness we're close to our house, 'cause we lived like right next to the church building at the time.
Okay. Do you remember the first snow when we were companions, Seth?
Yeah.
I have
Yes.
that ingrained in my head, right? So like the snow was really bad in both years of my mission, and the first snow of my mission, like I don't remember like specifics, but I remember like I didn't have good snowshoes. I had pretty torn up Doc Martens, and it was miserable. I mean, it was absolutely miserable. And the first snowfall when Seth and I were companions, I remember looking at the snow for like 30 minutes and like having a panic attack because my boots had since worn out. And so I essentially didn't have boots again. And like I just had to lace up my same Doc Martens with giant holes in them. Right.
Uh-huh.
And I remember it was like a little bit I felt like it was a miracle. Like it was a miracle moment because we both had bad shoes and we were walking around in like 2 feet deep snow. Like it was deep snow.
And then sometimes you would like step in a puddle under the ice. Oh, golly, that was so bad.
But my feet never got cold. Like,
Wow.
I kid you not. Like, we literally walked that entire day, and we were like, they're just not cold. Like, snow was being shoveled into my shoe and like between my shoe and my sock. But it was like, I never felt cold. And we ended up ending the day. We dropped by this kind of our favorite contact, Casey. Yeah. And afterwards, we like literally took our shoes off and our socks off and walked the rest of the way home barefoot to see. And my feet got very cold then. But
I do, dude. The shoe situation was so dire that like, and like my socks were getting so wet, I would like put one layer of socks on, then I did like shopping bags, and then another layer of socks on to try to keep the inner layer dry. It still totally didn't work.
No,
But
no.
like, that was a little bit of failed ingenuity. But didn't somebody like finally hook us up with some boots or something?
Yeah,
like
we
that?
got. I feel like we got hooked up with
Was
boots.
was it Casey?
It might have been
that?
Casey after seeing us walk barefoot home.
Dude, Casey was so clutch. That guy was awesome.
Casey was great.
All right, sorry. We've rambled enough so far.
Can I tell you about my companion who had short-term memory loss?
Tell
my
us.
gosh, this is one of my favorite of your stories.
Okay. Okay, so first off, she wasn't really my companion. Okay, and we're gonna change her name in case this is embarrassing for her. We're gonna call her Sister Smith. Yeah, so Sister Smith really did have short-term memory loss, and it really was just exactly what you'd expect. Like, it was obvious. Like, I had heard rumors in the mission before this point that she had short-term memory loss, but I was like, I don't know, like, maybe that's just gossip, maybe people are just being mean. No, like, within just a few minutes, it was, like, obvious. The second time we went on exchanges, so she's definitely already met me. And again, my name is Sister Richards at this time. We are driving around, trying to contact people or whatever, and she, just to make conversation, she starts to ask me about Sister Richards. And she goes, "Hey, so you were companions with Sister Richards, right?" And I was like, "Yep."
In a manner of speaking, yes.
And like, I had learned at that point that sometimes you just gotta go with it. So I was like, okay, I think she's just confusing me with Sister Filburn. So I'll just answer as if it's Sister Filburn. But it basically resulted in us having an entire conversation about Sister Richards. And in which I actually, it was funny. She was like, "Did you like get a lot done with her or whatever?" Like, she was asking, I don't know, kind of like gossipy questions about me. Like,
Are you obedient? Are you?
yeah, exactly.
Are you nice to be around?
Yeah, she was like trying to get the dirt on me. And I was like, yes, Sister Richards is a rock solid missionary. She works really hard.
5-star review. That's awesome.
So I was like, yeah, I got my good name out there. That's great. Yeah, and then the other really great thing that happened was, again, we're driving. She's driving. I'm in the passenger seat. We've got GPS, and you know how sometimes the GPS will, like, lag a little bit? I don't know, maybe it has trouble connecting or whatever. So she misses a turn, and the GPS tells her to do a U-turn in order to, to get back on track. So she does the U-turn, and then forgets that she did the U-turn. And the GPS is still hasn't caught up. It's still telling her to do the U-turn. So she U-turns again. And then at that point, it catches up and goes, "Oh, you need to do a U-turn."
Oh, no.
So we have to do another U-turn. I seriously, like, I just, like, sat back and I was like, how many times are we gonna have to do this? We're caught in an infinite loop. We're
It
gonna
just
be doing
broke
this
the
U-turn.
system.
We're gonna be doing a little circle until the sun goes down.
That's awesome.
From this transfer, like my last transfer in this area, and like my bookend for this area is back with Elder Thielen. And so he's been in the district for a while, and I get transferred to him. Now, Elder Thielen had anger management issues, like clinical anger management issues.
That is,
right?
Yeah, it's bad.
So, like, I just want to say before, I love Elder Thielen. I value our time together. I value him as a person, and incredibly hardworking missionary. But there was literally like one time in a lesson where we were teaching this, what you would call a golden investigator. Like, she reached out to us and she's like, "I think I'm ready to start having the discussions." We're like, fantastic.
Nice.
We meet with her in the middle of a lesson, right? Thielen is saying some point, I haven't talked in a while, so I just pitch in and bear my testimony. I say, like, everything Elder Thieland is saying is, I just want to bear my testimony of its truthfulness. And Thieland turns to me, looks at me, and says, "Will you just shut up for a minute? I'm trying to talk." We did not get invited back.
Oh no!
And I don't know what to say. I'm just like, pack it up. Nice meeting you. We're done here.
Yikes!
Alex, was that you that told me the story when he like punched a hole in the church wall?
Yeah. So we're doing district workout, right? And it's a Monday morning, and we're playing base tag, right? And he's like a football player. He's like 6'7" tall football player.
He's huge,
right? And we're playing base tag because we couldn't play basketball because he gets too invested.
For the safety of the rest of the zone.
Yeah. And so this guy, Elder Nupalau, who's this poly missionary, best basketball player I've ever met, and, just athletic guy, he's guarding the base, right? And Elder Thieland makes a run for it. He tags him out, and Thieland just kind of keeps running, and he's controlling himself. Like, he's actually doing everything he should be. Rather than taking it out on everybody, he's keeping it in, and not, like, bottling it in, but just, like, managing it. Braces himself on the wall right outside of the gym, and knocks this, like, 3-foot hole in the wall of the church. So I'm like, this is our stake center, and I'm like looking at this like, because like I seriously see him disappear. Thonk. Oh crap! And I'm like, and so I am on the phone with our stake president. I'm on the phone with the building coordinator all that morning, and building coordinator's like, missionaries, we're going to take your keys away. And President Miller, and I'm on the phone with President Miller, right? And President Miller eventually calls me up, and he's like, "Elder Glaves, do you know what a fiefdom is?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, "A fiefdom is a kingdom within a kingdom. And that's exactly what the building coordinator is. We're not going to let them take away your keys. We're not going to let them do anything. They're overstepping their bounds." And I'm like, wow, President Miller, you really have my back on this. Like, it was a thing. We can get it fixed up. Like, it's not a big deal. So, yeah,
That's
anyway.
really funny.
But, like, coming back, seeing him again we had so much friction. We had so much friction my entire transfer. But seeing him again in, like, zone conferences, we always spent, like, 20 minutes catching up. So, like, even though it was rough at the time, like, it wasn't like that relationship was completely trashed and I avoided him or anything. So, anyway, yeah, friendliness works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like all my companions taught me something. And I feel like the main thing that I learned from my second companion was people want to be understood first and then taught second, whether those be investigators or other missionaries or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He was always talking about how people want you to be their friend first and then their missionary second. And he applied that in more ways than I might have. Like, he would say things like, it's more important to be friends than it is to be obedient. I was like, I might feel differently.
Agree to disagree.
But, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not so sure about that one.
But anyway, and then the last one was Mercy. This poor companion. I feel like what my mission lacked in disso missionaries, we made up for in missionaries who either had depression or some other result of just kind of the intensity aspect of missions. And this poor missionary had a hardcore. And I remember at one point we were biking back to the apartment, and we were on the sidewalk, and there was this car, had its backup lights on, but he still went right past it. And sure enough, the car didn't see him and backed up fairly gently into my companion while he's riding his bike and pushed him into the main freeway.
Oh my.
Which was terrifying. So I quickly ran over and pulled him out of the road before any cars came. But his bike, even though it looked fine, it actually was mangled just enough that it was unrideable. But the guy who hit him got out, looked at the elder, and looked at the bike, and was like, everything fine? Anything broken? And my companion, who was brand new, says in Japanese, next time, look left.
Got it.
Anyway,
You sure
so
told him.
yeah. The guy drives off, but after he leaves, we realize that the bike really is broken. And so later that week, we decided to go back to that place because it looked like it was like a business or something like that. So we assumed that that guy probably worked there. So we go back there to ask if he can help pay to fix my companion's bike. And we knock on the door, and turns out it was a mafia hideout.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we go in there, and it's immediate apparent, just from like the aesthetics of the place, that it's a mafia hideout. And I'm like, shoot, yeah, we'll just pay for the bike ourselves. We can leave. We can super leave. But my companion, A, doesn't realize that, and B, doesn't want to pay. So one of the grunts comes up there and shows us his huge tattoo on his arm. And he's like, do you know what this means? And we're like, nope. Tell us. And he's
Nice
like,
tattoo.
he's like, it means I'm in the, and then in English he says mafia, and we're like, cool. That's awesome. And so I guess the guy who hit my companion is like the head over that local branch of the mafia, I guess. He was a super nice guy. He came back and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry I hit your bike. We can get that fixed up for you, totally free. Hop in the car with us and we'll drive away and we'll get it fixed. And I was like, maybe we'll go there ourselves and we'll meet you there. And they're like, no, you'll come in the car with us and we'll get it fixed up. And I was like, okay.
Did you get in the car with him?
I did. We really shouldn't have. It was really stupid,
Brave,
but we
brave.
did. And the whole time I was recording because I was like, if I die, at least there'll be evidence on my iPad of what happened to us.
But it turns out he was just being very cordial.
Yeah, to us anyway.
That's awesome.
When we got to the bike shop, he threatened the bike shop owner with his life to actually get the job done for free.
Oh.
Dude,
But
that's hardcore.
He knows what he did.
yeah. Right, I guess. And while we were waiting, we gave him the first lesson, and he was like, oh, that's really nice. I've got a family. I want them to be happy, and I'll think about it. And we're
Man,
like,
The cojones,
all in all,
man.
it was a pretty good day. Taught a lesson and got our bike fixed.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But,
All right, well, that's fantastic. I think on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So unless there's anything anybody else wants to throw in. All right. Then, hey, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.